Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to stop and rank all 6 Scream movies, from the worst to the best, of course. Before we get into this, if you guys have not seen Scream 6, click off the video, save it, and then come back later after you've watched it, because there will be some serious spoilers ahead. But if you have watched it, then enjoy. Real quick before we get into this, if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button as always. And let's get into the ranking. So coming in dead last for me is Scream 3. While I do still enjoy the movie in generally speaking, it definitely feels more like they were focusing on the Hollywood aspect, that it takes place in Hollywood, rather than the plot itself. And I think that's very clear from the get-go. They're making the jokes about Stab 3 and just everything with, the whole trope of the Scream movies, which is good when it starts, but then again, it turns into this whole thing of, making the killer non-interesting, to me at least. And then a lot of the scenes that happen in this movie just aren't all that interesting. Most of it's things that we've seen already. And even the things that we do get to see that, and it's, because sometimes in Scream movies, you're gonna get a lot of the same shots. It just doesn't work for me in this movie. I think there's a lot of, things that don't need to be in this movie. I think there's, too much little subplot in this movie. And I think just all around, it's a little bit of a mess when it comes to a Scream movie. It doesn't need to be super, focused in on itself. It just needs to have fun. With a not murder mystery, but like a slasher film. And for me, it just does not do that, so that's why it comes in dead last for me. And coming in at number 5, we have Scream 2. Now, this is a movie that I know a lot of people do enjoy, and I do enjoy it as well, but it just feels more like a piggyback off of the first movie, rather than being its own movie. And that's my biggest gripe with it, which again isn't a huge problem, but I went into this expecting more of a fresh story, kind of like Scream 4 or Scream 5 is kind of what I was expecting, and we got more of a Scream 1 Part 2, if that makes sense. And again, it's still a great movie. I just kind of wish that it felt more like its own thing. And I know some people might disagree with me here and there, but that's just kind of how I feel about this movie. It just kind of feels like the first movie, but they're in college, and it doesn't really change too much. So that's why it comes in at number 5 for me. And in 4th place, we have Scream 4. Actually, one of the better Scream movies in this franchise, and this is kind of where I think that the Scream movies started to get really good again. Of course, I love what they did with Emma Roberts in this movie. I thought that was probably one of my favorite killers in the whole Scream franchise. She just looks pure psychotic, and she, nothing against Emma Roberts, but she just has that look to her, like she really could be a serial killer. And it totally worked for me. I also loved the very early 2000s kind of shtick that they have going on in this movie. It feels very like 2008, like late 2000s, which is obviously when this movie does take place. But it just felt like such a cool setting for a Scream movie. And also with the addition of Kirby and just all the great new side characters that they have in this movie. Just made for a really fun and enjoyable experience. So that's why it comes in at number 4 for me. And cracking the top 3, we have Scream 6. So this is obviously the most recent Scream movie to come out, and honestly, I really enjoyed myself with it. I don't think it's quite as good as Scream 5 or the first one, but I do enjoy it nonetheless. I think it's probably the best location we've ever gotten for a Scream movie, and while I do think it was just a tad underutilized, they did utilize some good things about it, like the subway scene, and just kind of using that whole trope of you're in New York City and you can use alleys in this way and that way, and just kind of never knowing where Ghostface is going to be. The one biggest issue I did have with this movie was the third act. kind of excluding the subway scene because I did really enjoy that. I just think that the killers, more specifically the daughter or the sister, of our killer from Scream 5, I think it was Richie. Yeah, Richie from Scream 5, his sister. I just didn't quite connect with her. I think that as a killer, she was fine. It makes sense from a story standpoint, but I think that the cop and the son were just better. I just didn't, I don't know, their whole thing, I just kind of was weird. I didn't totally get behind it, but I still did enjoy most of the movie before we got to that point. And as our runner-up, we have Scream 5, one of probably the best reboots I've ever seen a movie do, because quite literally it almost beats the whole franchise of Scream movies. You know, you have a whole brand new cast of characters, mostly. You know, you still have Dewey coming in with Gale, and I think Sydney even enters the mix, even for a little bit. And I think the way that they did this movie was so genius, because Scream is such a movie about like generational like movie tropes, and it kind of tries to stay up with the times of what is popular at the time with that current era of movies, and it totally does that with this. This doesn't feel like the original Scream movies. It feels like its own thing with the Scream template on it, and I really enjoy that. I thought that was just absolutely awesome. I love our new Sam and our whole new cast of characters that we get in this movie, obviously being Tara and Sam. And then I think we even get a couple of other side characters that I really enjoyed. I don't know what his name is, but I know he played Clay Jensen in 13 Reasons Why. I thought he was really good in this movie. And I just think that the kills and overall reveal of the killers was fantastic and just felt so true to the original heart of Scream that it had to make my top 2. And of course, my number 1, you knew it was going to be this from the start, is the first Scream. It's so iconic. It does everything right, from the villains to the reveals to the deaths to just that early 90s setup with, you know, it just has such that feel to it that it can't be replicated anymore. It was only something that could have been done when this movie was made, and it just kills it. It's one of those movies I always find myself going back to, and honestly should be definitely a template that people should at least watch before talking about their favorite horror or slasher film. I love Stu. I do love Billy Loomis in this movie, but Stu is actually my favorite killer in this movie, just because he's so frantic and crazy that just, to me, totally like encapsulates who Ghostface is as like a person, someone with no reason or thought that just wants to kill people because they're just insane. And I love that they totally like encapsulate that with Stu in this movie. So yeah, guys, that is my ranking of Scream 6. So let me know what your ranking is down in the comments below. And if you guys have already seen Scream 6, or if you are anticipating and seeing it. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what your guys' list down are in the comments below. Peace, everybody.